Hey, everybody, and welcome to Stories at the Way LA. We are so excited to have you guys with us. We have a very special guest here with us today, good friend of mine, Rafi Bell. How are you doing today, man?
I'm great. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah,
It's an
man,
honor.
we're glad to have you, man. Thank you so much for
you.
being here with us, and we're excited to hear your story, man. I've known you for quite some time, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more today.
Absolutely.
And I know we have a lot of viewers here that are watching, and they're looking to be encouraged today, and I believe that's what's going to happen. You know, so as we get started, I'd love to hear just a little bit about how you grew up, a little bit of your home life. Let's start with level one. How was it like for you growing up, and what was your family like, and you being as a kid and things like that?
Got it. So I grew up in San Bernardino.
Okay.
I currently lead in San Bernardino as a principal. But growing up, I grew up with two matriarchs. So my mother and my grandmother. So my mother had 6 kids growing
Wow.
up in San Bernardino. And yeah, so it was one of the things that I had and one of the things that were beneficial to me was that I had just a very strong mother. So she got into UCLA after college, or after high school. So she was
Wow.
very, very just very smart.
It's
I had a
intelligent, huh?
smart mom.
That's awesome, man.
But not only that, but I had a mom who was also had very strong morals. She wasn't necessarily a believer, like I didn't grow up in a Christian house,
Right.
but there was definitely morals.
Right. Yeah.
There's a standard of like morality and like how we treat people, how
Definitely.
we conduct ourselves.
Yes.
So I think that really helped me.
Definitely.
Even though I grew up in the hood,
Yeah.
it was like gunshots and
Yeah.
no, seriously,
Yeah,
like
man, that's
gunshots
crazy.
through constantly. San Bernardino used to be crazy,
Man.
Back
then too, I'm sure it
remember
was
the
much
house
worse.
getting shot up a couple of times and fights and
Man.
all kind of stuff, but it was always different, even though I was in the hood, like I kind of stood out a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because of the strong background,
Yeah,
a strong
for sure.
household.
Strong household. Always know you coming home and mom's
Yeah.
right there.
I used to
and,
have to pick up my pants after.
Yeah.
I would leave the house and
Yeah.
drop my pants a little to fit in,
Yeah, I
and
think so.
sagging. And then as soon as I got on the block, I had to pick it back.
Pick 'em back.
Right.
Yeah, you knew mom would tell you something.
Exactly.
Well, that's I think a lot of people, they don't grow up with, sometimes mom or dad and having the right morals and things like that. And then, some people, they grow up with a faith home, someone that is believer and takes them to church. And that's something that you didn't experience.
Right.
A lot of times when we're not in church, when we're not following God, even though we may have the right morals and things like that, there are a lot of different things that we can get involved in, and a lot of things that, that it can be maybe drugs, that can be maybe, fighting, the wrong relationships. I know you had a mom with great morals and great values, and you came from that type of household. But maybe you could explain just a little bit of, maybe, like you mentioned, San Bernardino, some of the culture. And in culture, I mean like the demographic, the area that you were in, and how, and maybe the people there too, maybe people in school, things like that, that played a part into exposing you to things like drugs and things like that as well.
Yeah. So definitely, me personally, one of the things that I was struggle with mostly was identity.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that, like, not having a father, in the house, and my mom, she was great. But I think, there wasn't like it was not like, I just struggle with identity. I was left to figure out, things for myself.
Yeah. Like your
What
future.
what does it mean to be a man,
It's a big one.
Right. And then, so as a kid, in the public school system, and not having someone in the house define that for you, you're left to like influences of your friends and things like that. So I was definitely just trying to, trying to fit in, trying to fit in. I had some crazy relationships,
Yeah.
with girls and stuff, and I didn't really uh, you know, didn't get too crazy into doing crazy stuff,
That's
you
good,
know,
though.
but I just remember just being like battling, like, who am I? You know,
Yeah.
what am I doing? I have friends who were like, you know, like very like ladies men, you know, and
Oh,
like
right,
always
right, right.
talking to all the, then I had other friends who were more like gangsters, you know, and
Yeah,
like,
right.
and I was never like I was never like, I knew I was very smart, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because of the household that I
Right,
grew
right.
up
Your
in,
mom
but I
was
never
smart.
like, you know, navigated toward like the really smart people,
Oh,
you
okay,
know,
okay, okay,
like the
yeah.
nerds, you know. I was more like, oh, I want to be a gangster, you know, I want to be like a ladies man, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
But I never felt like I completely fit in.
Mm.
And so I just remember being struggling with identity a
Definitely.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. And with that struggle of identity, because I know we've all been there. I mean, I myself, like, especially in high school, there's
Yeah.
like those different groups. Like, you have the gangster group, you
Right.
have, you know, the group that parties all the time, you have that, and then the
Yes.
people in sports, and then they party as well. So there's like a lot of different angles
Yeah.
you could go to, especially when you get in school, and especially when, you know, you feel like you might deal with like insecurity and things like that.
Right. Absolutely. Very insecure.
You know,
I was
that's
definitely very
that's a
insecure.
big one, especially in high school and things
Yeah,
like that. But I would say being exposed to different relationships like that, where they were, you know, involved in some of the things that maybe we're talking about, like whether it's like that lifestyle of drinking, smoking, going to parties, things like that high school, you know,
Yeah.
offers a lot. What would you say were some of the consequences for yourself when you would take part in some of those relationships? I
Right.
know you mentioned like relationships with other girls at the time in high school. You're just in high school, you know, or even maybe some of those people that were gangsters when you were a part of the gangsters, or when you were a part of the whatever group you were a part of. What were some of the consequences that you had experienced? Were you depressed? And what were you kind of going through?
I think the consequence was mostly, like I said, identity, you know, just struggling with like trying to figure out, like I wasn't, I felt like I didn't fit in fully.
Okay.
So, you know, yeah, I went to the parties. Yeah, I went to the clubs.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
I had, you know, I had girlfriends and we, you know, were doing, you know, crazy stuff.
For sure.
But, yeah, I think that was the biggest consequence for me is like knowing that like these are my friends, these are my, you know, the people I'm growing up with, but not fully, like I'm not them, you know.
Yeah.
Like this is not necessarily, I don't have, I go home and I'm not, it's not hood, you know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I have
yeah,
a strong mom and grandmother. So I think
Exactly. Like the
it was
front.
just like this dichotomy, like, okay, am I this, am I that, like who?
Yeah.
And so I was really trying, I think a big consequence was insecurity because
Okay.
I was trying to like lessen this light, you know, like I knew I had something in me. I knew I was supposed to be somebody great, but I was like, I'm gonna follow you, you know, like
you were
you're
like holding
cool.
back, like
yeah,
settling
and
for
I was a
less.
follower, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I was a follower, you know. Let me go to the clubs with you. Let me. Oh yeah, I remember back in that time, like Genuine was like
Okay.
super, you know, like super. So I was like, man, I like Genuine. Let me dance like him. Let me learn how to, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me learn how to. So I don't know. I was just, I think it was just identity
It's like
crisis.
tiring after a
It
while.
was very, very much so.
Yeah.
Just tiring. Just felt like a square peg and trying to in a circular hole, you know, or it just didn't feel like I
it
fit.
didn't fit right.
Not at all.
It wasn't you.
No.
Yeah, no, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
That
Even
makes
how I
sense.
dressed, you know, I was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
sagged my pants and
Yeah.
I'm doing this because, you know, this is what the culture does.
Yeah.
But it was not me though, you know.
Exactly. And I'm sure that got tiring after a while. And, you know, I love to hear like a little bit of the turning point for you. You had mentioned that felt tiring for you, just
Yeah.
having to be a different person, you know, one when you were with mom and then one when you were out in the world. And what was the turning point for you like, and how did that come about for you, choosing Jesus?
Right. So my turning point was in a high school classroom. I was so I was in tutoring, and I think the Lord had already started to move on my heart, and just like in terms of like me really getting focused on academics and like
Okay.
really, you know, like exercising my full potential. So I was in tutoring. This was like senior year in high school, and before this, moment, I remember being in middle school, and one of the things that I didn't mention was I was a thief. Like,
Oh, okay.
that was a big thing.
Oh, man.
That was probably the biggest thing that I struggled with, was like stealing. And so I remember in middle school, like, you know, I would steal from, you know, my mother, you know, that was like a big thing, you know, just stealing.
Yeah.
And so I remember just feeling like this guilt, you know.
Yeah.
Like, and I even in elementary school, you know, I was like stealing stuff out of kids' backpacks
Man.
and stuff. So that was definitely something. So I remember just feeling so guilty in middle school, and like it was almost like, not almost, I literally said to myself, I was like, dude, I'm going to hell. You know, like if I die right now, like I know that I'm not doing the right thing.
Right.
But I didn't know, because I didn't grow up in a household that was religious. I didn't know anything about God. You know,
Man.
I believed God was real, but I didn't know who he was. I grew up in a household where my mother was practicing Nation of Islam. You know, so my name actually, all six of us, me and my 5 siblings, we all have Arabic names.
That's crazy.
So my first name is Rafi, you know, it's in the Quran.
Wow.
And then my middle name is Alim Latif, you know.
Whoa.
And then I have Bell, you know, which is like the only American name. So it's crazy. Like, so,
wow, so you didn't have that kind of background of a Christian?
No, I didn't have a Christian background. But then, you know, my mom would, like, you know, pray to Allah and things in the house you know, we did some, but then there's times where she would also have somebody in the house who was doing Bible study, you know. So it was like kind of confusing too.
Right.
I think my mom was still trying to figure things out. So for me, you know, feeling that conviction, like, dude, like I know that I'm going to a dark place, you know, if I were to die right now. Like, I wanted to know, like, the right way, you know. I wanted to know, and I had gone to church a couple of times with my neighbors.
Okay.
And so, and it was just a hangout, you know, we would be in the back of the church hanging out, you know. Their mom made them go, you know. But I remember at the end of church, that altar call. Wow. And I remember, like, wanting to get up.
That's crazy.
You know, like, dude, like, but I never did, because I knew, you know, I was with my boys and I would look weird, you know. But I remember that, like, they, you know, they would say, yo, if you want to give your life to Christ right now, you know, and like, you know, be saved. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know?
What does that mean?
But I knew it was something that I wanted to do.
You wanted to do, right.
So I think, so anyway, fast forward, I'm in high school and I'm in tutoring, and I overhear a group of students talking about the Bible. And my teacher, who, Mr. Barano, who I still know today, he was a believer, and he was sharing with the one of my friends, he was answering her questions, you know. She was asking, what about this, or why does God do this? And he was like, well, the Bible says this, you know. And all I remember is I'm in the back of the class, I'm studying, but God gave me an ear to hear, like, everything that my teacher was saying, you know. And my heart started burning. Like, it was always like, this is truth. You know,
good, man.
Like who he's talking about, who he's describing, like that. I want to know him, you know. So I waited till after that class was over. And I had another friend in that class who I knew was a Christian, because she would ask me, like, random questions about about praying and stuff. So I remember I waited till after that tutoring class was over. I approached her and I said, hey, like, who you were talking about, I want to know.
Wow.
Like, I don't go to church, you know, I don't know God, you know. I was like, do you go to church? You know? And then she was like, yeah, actually my grandfather is the pastor of the church I go to. So I just asked, I was like, hey, can I go with you this Sunday? You know, because I remember, like, I want to do that thing that they do at the end of the church. You know?
Exactly.
I was like, I want to, you know. So I remember going, and her cousin was like one of my close friends, and I just found out that they were cousins. So they came and picked me up, and, you know, I went to church that Sunday, and I waited to that altar call, you know.
That's crazy.
And then I gave my life to Christ, you know.
Wow.
And I started studying the Word, and that's where I felt like my identity I got my identity from.
That's incredible.
Just studying about Christ and studying my word every day at lunchtime. Yeah.
Wow. And you just began to just seek after God after that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Did you ever go back to that church, or did you end up finding
a
church?
I went back to I went there. That was my whole senior year. So whole senior year, I was going there. I was learning about God and studying the word every day. And then I went on to college. I went to Louisiana Grambling State.
Oh wow.
GSU. Whoop, whoop.
That's awesome.
So I went away to a black college in Louisiana, in the middle of nowhere, and I became a leader. Like a leader on campus ministry. I was the president of the campus ministry after 1 year of learning the Bible.
That's so awesome, man.
Literally, just senior year fire. Was like on fire, man. And I became the campus leader of ministry.
Crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was like a complete like turnaround for me.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward, bro. God has done a lot in your life, and how would you say that the way church came into play in helping you with your transition to living a godly life?
So I graduated from Grambling, spent some time up north, and then I left and I traveled to the East Coast for like 6 years.
Okay.
So I was on the East Coast. I started teaching. I became a teacher out there. Taught in Newark, New Jersey.
Wow.
And Harlem. I was teaching in Harlem for like cool. 2 years, and I was in a So anyway, things didn't work out with a relationship that I was in. And I was just like, after that, I was like, okay, God, like, am I going to stay out here? I'm going to go back home. I'm going to DC, And so I just, I was like, okay, if I'm going to go back home, I need a church, So I was literally in my apartment in Newark, New Jersey, and like doing Google searches for churches. And I was like, I know I can't go back to the church I gave my life to Christ in, even though my family. Mm-hmm. So I didn't say this. After I gave my life to Christ, my whole family gave their life. Like my mother dedicated her life to Christ, rededicated her life to Christ.
That's so
my
good.
Little siblings started going to church. My grandparents got baptized. Like it was like God used me to bring in my whole family.
That's incredible.
So my family kept going there for years, but I was like, do I want to go back to that church, where my family was, or do I want? But I knew I outgrew it,
Wow.
So I did a Google search and found the way. I was like, yo, like this is crazy. I've never heard about this. The whole time I grew up in San Bernardino. But then I started listening to sermons from Pastor Marco. And dude, I was like, he's super funny. Pastor Marco I'm like, this pastor is so funny. I was cracking up, in my apartment, like I would literally like be in my apartment, and I was like, I felt like the Lord was calling me to go back home, but home was San Bernardino,
Exactly.
So I'm like in New York City, like
all the way over there.
I was like New York City, San Bernardino. I was like, dude, I'm living it up out here,
Right.
But I felt like God was leading me to come back home, and there's an opportunity to like become a school leader here, which was a passion, which was a dream of mine.
It's a big deal.
So, but I was like, so as I started to listen to sermons from Pastor Marco, I knew that the word was doctrinally sound,
Mm-hmm.
like it was good teaching, and he was funny and relational. And so I just saw the vision, saw what the church was doing, and I told Pastor Marco this when I came back on a Tuesday. I left New Jersey. I flew in on a Tuesday, and I was in the way on Wednesday. And the church actually played a big role in me actually coming back. Because there was an opportunity for me to grow as a leader, school leader. But if I didn't have a strong church, I wasn't. If I didn't have a strong community, because I was leaving, system. I was leaving family. Like I made strong relationships out there.
For sure.
So the way played a role in me even being back in California.
That's
and I just started coming, and
all
that I learned, in high school and college was just like the starting point. Like now at the way, I've grown as a leader. I've been challenged. Let me say that.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
I've been challenged to grow. And so when you think, even though I thought I had kind of reached my climax, it's like now my floor, you
There's
know,
more. There's
like
more.
there's a whole nother level of impact,
Man.
and world impact,
Yeah.
you know, so
That's right.
yeah.
And so it looks like it wasn't just a church transition for you, it was a life transition.
Mm-hmm.
So you really like just laid down everything for what God was calling you to do. That's super awesome, bro.
Yeah.
I love that. Recapping your story, I mean, bro, like you were like more so insecure to step out. Then you step out and you see like all these wonderful things of how God had created someone intelligent inside of you, someone who was made for more, someone who didn't want to hold back. You stop holding back and you're just released like into leadership. You're just released into influence and just raised up, you know? And I think that's really awesome. That's a big part of your story.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of lessons that you were able to learn because you didn't hold back. And I think that's really big for everybody listening. Like, go for those dreams that God has in your heart, you know? Like, for everybody listening right now, like, if maybe you are a senior in high school and you don't know if you should give your life to God, give your life to God and see what he can do. He can release you into something great.
Yeah.
So I just love hearing about everything like that, man. And what does your life look like today? Can you share a little bit about how God, you know, he's transitioned you into this church and he's built you, just like you said, you've been challenged, you've grown, right? But what does your life look like today, man? Can you share with us?
Well, today I'm a school leader. So
Okay.
I taught for 10 years, became an educator, and I do believe that you know, the situation I had that day where I gave my life to Christ in a classroom,
Right.
you know, that teacher, that believer, became a very big impact in my life.
The mentor, the teacher that was there. Yeah, that's awesome.
I got to know him on a real level, and he really poured into me.
Wow.
The impact that he had, he was a dope teacher, but he was a believer too.
Wow.
And I just was like, you know what, I want to do that, you know, like.
Good example.
So I became a teacher, but then I knew there was a calling for me to lead, you know, and like just to make a bigger impact. So now I'm a principal.
Come on,
I'm
man.
a principal of a transitional kindergarten to a 8th grade.
Okay.
And have a vision just to, you know, really educate, you know, really transform kids, you know, and like in inner cities, you know.
Yeah.
So like that's one of the reasons why I came back too.
Wow.
Yeah, I came back because of the way, you know, and I knew I was gonna grow.
Right.
But I came back because I'm like, okay, New York, New Jersey, that's like the education mecca. Like they got it. Like they have a lot of leaders out there that's doing crazy great things for education.
Wow.
But San Bernardino, like what's happening?
They need it.
You know?
We need it.
So actually, and I didn't mention this, I actually teach at a school that helped open right after college.
No way.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So I help
That's awesome.
open this school. It's a charter school. And so now I lead, you know. I'm married. I got married.
Come on, man.
Shout out to my wife. But yeah, we got married last year. So I'm married to a beautiful woman, and
That's awesome, man.
I'm leading, you know, a school. I get a chance to lead a staff of about 50 people. About 300 kids from the inner city.
Wow.
And we're really on a mission to really transform their thinking.
Yes.
You know, and to challenge them, to hold them to high expectations.
I love that.
And to be leaders, right? You know, to know who they are.
Yeah.
To be comfortable thinking intellectually and striving to go to college and be all that they can.
That's good.
And then I help lead our discipleship groups.
That's
awesome,
awesome,
the
bro.
way. So
That's
I'm
huge.
helping train up other leaders to launch out small groups, you know,
Yes.
and you know, people who come to the church, connect them to small groups.
That's good.
So yeah, man.
I love that, man. And it seems like your whole story is full circle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it started there in that classroom.
Yeah.
And then it came all the way back around. Now you're helping kids that, you know, were in the exact same shoes as you were.
Exactly.
You know, not holding back. And I think that's something we can all learn today is not to hold back, but, you know, to make the decision that if we haven't yet to give our lives to Jesus. And, you know, I think also just to continue to do life with God.
Yes.
That's a commitment that we can all make. And, you know, if you were to say one thing to someone who was in that classroom maybe, and they were hearing about God or about this person that they wanted to get to know Jesus, what would you say to that person if they're kind of on the fence right now about chasing after Jesus or stepping out of their comfort zone and knowing that they're meant for more in a life that God had called them to? What would you say to that person that's listening right now to encourage them? What would you say?
Wow. Well, I can just say that Jesus, the person of Jesus that I learned about in high school, like I just became enamored, and just fascinated in a real way. Like growing up in a household that wasn't religious, searching for God, searching for truth. When I read the book of Matthew, that was the first book I ever read.
Matthew.
The story of Christ, and how he talked to people, how he loved on people, how he was just a leader, he just didn't care.
Exactly.
He was a maverick. Like he stood up and went against the grain.
Yes, he did.
And that related to it.
Right.
As a person who didn't have identity, I found my identity. I became a maverick. Wow. The people that I was trying to follow, I was leading. They were coming to me like, yo, teach me. I was in high school, and when I gave my life to Christ, I was sitting at a table by myself with the Bible open,
Wow.
and I started by myself and had a table full of people,
Wow, that's good.
And the people that I was trying to dance like and be like, dude, they were, one of them is a pastor today.
No,
it's crazy.
Way.
The person crazy. I was trying to be like started following me.
Whoa.
And I started to disciple him.
Wow.
So and all in 1 year. So instantly found my identity, became a leader, and God set me on a pedestal. Wow. He set me on a very high place.
Man.
So I was honored amongst all my peers in high school.
That's so good.
Started blessing me back to back, winning tons of I got so many scholarships, got into so many colleges. Wow. My friends that I was trying to be like were like, whoa, what happened to him? What is God is literally, and they knew they knew who I was representing. So I just would encourage, people who were there, those high school students, just, stand up, stand up. You don't have to follow the crowd. When you make a stand for Christ, the Bible says that we are like cities upon a hill. We're like a light for a house, and we that can't be hidden.
That's right.
Like we're like a city on a hill that can't be hidden.
Matthew,
we're like a light, right? We're like a lampstand that brings light to the whole house.
Yes.
And so that's what the Lord wants. He wants to take a person and set an example.
That's so
good. Of this is what happens when you honor me.
Yes.
Exactly. Like you're a blessed man. You're a blessed life.
That's amazing.
And then people, people want God. So if you're a young person, or anybody, who are struggling with identity and struggling trying to find approval, other people's approval.
Right.
Just get comfortable in your own shoes,
Yeah.
Like you don't need anybody's approval.
Yeah.
Go against the grain and make a stand for Christ.
Come on.
And he will bless you, and will. That's what a leader does, right?
Yes.
A leader is not trying to set the it's not a thermostat. We're
not a thermostat.
We're not a thermometer. Sorry,
not
we're
a thermometer. It's a thermostat. Yeah.
We set the temperature.
We set the temperature.
We show people where to go.
That's right.
And so, yeah.
That's good. That's some great advice, bro. Thank you so much for being on this show,
Absolutely.
man, and like just sharing your testimony, your story. I know that it's touched people so far, and I can't wait to hear about the testimonies, bro. And you are a light. And thank you so much for being on this, and I know that a lot of people have seen the light today through your story.